Bill Torreson shows the network of man-made islands China built on what had been coral reefs claimed by other countries. Plane flying over the South China Sea.
We're getting a close-up look at a Chinese fighter jet. The aircrew here identifies it as a J-11,
longest military missions in the world, a non-stop 33-hour flight by this B-52 strategic bomber group to the other side of the world.
On August 12, 2025, a $2 billion American B-2 Spirit bomber found itself in the crosshairs of China's newest weapon, the HQ-29 Neo interceptor. Traveling at Mach 16 with dual radar and infrared seekers, this missile was designed to do the impossible: kill stealth. But here's the question. What happens when the most advanced defense system meets the most advanced stealth aircraft in the world? The answer wasn't what Beijing expected, and it changed the shape of the South China Sea overnight.
00, Delta Hotel 776.
Along the way, picking up fuel from a flying gas station.
American aircraft, this is the PLA Air Force. You are approaching Chinese airspace.
Before we move on, I would like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why did Beijing believe the HQ-29 Neo created an unbreakable wall in the South China Sea? It began with the promise of speed and range designed to overwhelm anything that dared cross into contested skies. The missile's developers described it as China's shield, fast enough to slice through the stratosphere at Mach 16 and armed with sensors that could chase both heat plumes and radar signatures. In official announcements, the HQ-29 Neo wasn't just another interceptor. It was presented as a game-changer, the jewel of coastal defense.
Leadership of China, what do they react to? We see that they publicly comment about our Bomber Task Force missions.
That they say is armed with air-to-air missiles, and it's been shadowing this U.S. Navy plane now for about 15 minutes.
The Chinese pilot never responds, but eventually leaves when the U.S. plane turns south.
A weapon that could finally flip the balance in any encounter with America's stealth arsenal. Military planners in Beijing spoke of it as proof that the age of untouchable bombers was coming to an end. Analysts outside of China, especially those connected to regional think tanks, echoed the idea that the system might finally be capable of breaking the cloak that gave the B-2 its reputation. The phrase "missile that could kill stealth" circulated in discussions across military journals and defense conferences, leaving allies with a hint of concern and adversaries with a new respect for China's layered coastal network. It was a narrative polished through state channels, sharpened in technical write-ups, and spread through documentaries that showed animated silhouettes of American bombers being shredded midair. The contradiction in this buildup was obvious. The whole purpose of the B-2 and its successors has always been clear: to fly where radars fail, to loiter over high-risk regions without being noticed, and to reach targets through protections that once would have required entire fleets of support aircraft. Against that design stood the HQ-29 Neo, a missile claiming it could see what was never meant to be seen.
Ignoring competing claims from countries like Vietnam and the Philippines.
From militarized artificial islands to fighter jets and warplanes, China's heavy presence in the disputed region is putting the U.S. and its allies on notice.
The plane is headed past the self-governing island of Taiwan, which China claims as its own.
That bold claim rested not only on one seeker, but on two: an active radar head working together with a high-sensitivity infrared tracker that followed heat trails even in cluttered environments. Beijing argued that this twin guidance made stealth irrelevant. Nowhere was this illusion staged more aggressively than at Scarborough Shoal. Satellite images began showing hexagonal radar arrays erected beside new fortified hangars. From a vantage point above, overlapping rings of radar coverage stretched to merge seamlessly with the infrared grid tied into sea-based sensor ships. Propaganda videos soon followed, showing crisp computer renderings of HQ-29 launchers rising from camouflage pits, their canisters elevating as if the entire reef had transformed into a steel fortress. The message was broadcast loud. Any incursion here would be met with pinpoint interception. But beneath the spectacle, military experts abroad questioned whether such systems could truly function under the stress of combat. Integrating dozens of radars, launchers, command links, and tracking networks into a seamless whole requires not just technology, but coordination under jamming, deception, and time pressure.
Another Friday afternoon, South China Sea.
The U.S. Navy invited CNN to fly on a P-8 reconnaissance.
Keep a safe distance or you'll be intercepted.
That's when the Chinese People's Liberation Army fighter jet appears, flying so close you...
In exercises, crews practiced scripted engagements at predictable intervals. In real battle conditions, those same crews could be facing false tracks, decoy drones, and hostile jamming waves that blur targeting data. That concern was never voiced in Chinese state outlets, but it circulated quietly in defense reporting among those watching from afar. Stealth aircraft were never built without anticipation of such challenges. Engineers deliberately shaped the B-2's fuselage not only to reduce radar cross-section, but also to block emissions that seekers might follow. On top of that, electronic warfare pods can scatter radar beams back in misleading directions, while infrared suppression systems cool exhaust to blend with the background sky. Together, these countermeasures were designed precisely for missiles like the HQ-29, weapons that depended on sensors being able to track clearly. What appeared to be an impenetrable wall was in truth a shield with seams. Precision timing, layered tactics, and disciplined coordination could expose those seams, giving stealth aircraft windows to slip through. The reality of combat is not about glossy state graphics or perfectly controlled launches, but about what happens when unpredictable moves strike against rigid systems. And that test finally came the night a real HQ-29 rose into the sky against a real B-2. What happens when the launch of a single missile sets off a 6-hour countdown for American bombers already circling in the high atmosphere? That moment came when an HQ-29 interceptor lifted off the rails near Scarborough Shoal. In response, two B-2 Spirits waiting in holding patterns to the east received the command they had been trained for. They were codenamed Nightfall 1 and Nightfall 2. Both aircraft began their slow, deliberate turn toward the radar arcs that had once been described as impossible to pierce. For them, the clock had started, and every movement from then on was measured against the knowledge that within hours, the Chinese crews would regroup, reload, and reset their defenses.
We're refueling in midair right now, flying just about 40 feet away from a KC-135 tanker plane.
To the South China Sea, which China also claims almost all for itself.
The bombers did not fly alone. Tanker aircraft were already positioned across the Philippine Sea, topping off fuel at intervals to allow the Spirits to extend their time on station. F-35 escorts orbited in wide arcs, their own low observable profiles masking the fact that they were small guardians, tying tight protective circles around the approaching bombers. High above, satellites transmitted streams of imagery into command posts where analysts tracked the status of radar domes, mobile launchers, and the hardened bunkers that fed targeting data to the coastal grid. This was not a run of reckless force. It was a step-by-step orchestration meant to strike with accuracy while holding escalation just below the threshold of open war. The challenge in this setup was not only to hit the fortified site, but to do it without dragging the region into full conflict. That meant avoiding civilian coverage zones, ensuring warnings were silent, and hitting hardened targets in such rapid order that no counterattack could gain footing. China's crews likely assumed they still had strength in reserve. What they did not see was the spectrum of electronic warfare already flooding the atmosphere. From the west, U.S. aircraft sent sweeping pulses of interference that made enemy radar see phantom tracks, decoys that multiplied and moved in strange formations. Drones deliberately imitated the radar cross-sections of bombers, each one pulling the HQ-29 watchers into chasing ghosts. Amid that confusion, Nightfall 1 opened its bomb bay, released guided ordnance, then locked into course correction. Nightfall 2 did the same. In less than 15 seconds, both aircraft had delivered precision JDAMs directly onto nodes that powered the coastal radar grid. The exactness of the drop left little room for recovery. Arrays imploded under the shock. Underground generators snapped offline. Launcher canisters still warming for reload were split open, throwing debris in every direction. And the central bunker, reinforced and advertised as impregnable, collapsed inward after a delayed fuse warhead cracked its foundation. For Beijing, the humiliation ran deeper than the concrete rubble left on the shoal. A network promoted for years as the cornerstone of defense had been wrecked in a single night by 2 bombers and coordinated support. The message was clear enough. Strength is not measured by graphics in press releases, but by resilience before actual precision strikes. And with this operation complete, the conversation shifted away from interceptors and stealth toward the larger question of deterrence and the fragile perception of power. In one night, the supposed shield that was meant to guard the South China Sea showed cracks large enough to be seen around the world. Years of promises and projections collapsed once precision strikes exposed how quickly a balance can shift when theory meets reality. Advanced defenses are only as strong as their ability to withstand first contact, and here that contact left nothing but silence on the radar screens. Allies noticed, rivals noticed, and the lesson was delivered far from speeches and statements. Aggression does not buy security. Swift, surgical response makes sure it carries a heavy cost.